Hello, my name is Luis MaGill. I'm a visual artist working across disciplines, and in this second take video of my art life, I will be showing some archives from past to present and projects in the pipeline. Let's begin. In the days I was not at the school rated as the most violent in Europe, I was on walkabout, adventuring in full streets of derelict tenement buildings, littered with visual delights of abandoned furniture, furnishings and photograph. I would be at home, watching television for schools and colleges, play for the day, and found a love for sculpting, ecology and archaeology through Jacques Cousteau. I achieved 1 O grade in art and had an exhibition in my mum's hallway. But that was the last of art life for a while. An apprenticeship in general furnishings and then an elected trade union branch member, prodigy. Then Thatcher's era forced self-employment for many a journeyman. 20 years on, self-employed and a recurring need to make art and recalibrate from a series of peaks and troughs through aggravated by narcolepsy, overworking, diet and emotion. I had stumbled upon Nielsen Coachhouse Ceramics Studio and the late Dr. Alex Leckie, retired head of ceramics at Glasgow School of Art, and Dr. David R. Taylor, retired fine art tutor, also Glasgow School of Art. I was set a study of Venus, the final piece in clay embodied with the sand from the shores of the island of Lewis, formed in an embodied shamanic trance, which was a month early for the killing. So I was sent to Glasgow School of Art, who obliged, and next day they're pinned on the wall, Venus, and a comment, a degree or 2 hotter, it would not have survived the firing, the edge of destruction. The question now was, how can this work inform me more? Make this a marker slide for the answer. And this one for time travel. Yes, that's Tony Robinson from the Time team and myself wearing a Cardonald College cast gold Venus, but more of that later. My first stop was as a resident, now resident in Pollock, as an urban potter with an outlet in the Prince's Square Scottish Craft and Design Centre. I engaged with the local Ladywell community and frequently stayed over at Colin MacLeod's project, Pollock Free State. On their open day, I showed the pit-fired ceramics made on site, and a sculpted piece themed around Cranogs was purchased by Pat Kane for his mum. The videos links are in the descriptions for this.
It isn't bothered. There's no responsibility. There's no, in the Free State we kind of relearn how to take responsibility in some small way, and we relearned to articulate our voice, and in some ways we found direction.
And then when that project finished, I then moved to Gorbals United as an invite from the Johns Main Centre as boxing coach. I designed grading badges, as you can see on the hat, and introduced drawing as a concentration and eye muscle workout. With art school and museum visits, we had a succession of wins in the ring and youth confidence for non-competitors. Plans to include a dedicated art space in the sports and community complex expansion were taken up by the council when the project closed. This is a self-portrait in the same mirror, but narcolepsy kicking in with a flood of exhausting life events. An introduction to counselling helped with a new reading list and passion for recovery of the mind tools. I later moved again, returning to Gorbals, homeless and working night shifts while renovating the interior and having the pleasure of being invited onto the community council for Lorison, and weekly visits from the treasurer of New Gorbals Housing Association, the late William McLean. Metro and breakfast in hand, architecture and many other stories filled the mornings. This was a finished room and a crystal glazed ceramic Venus limited edition made on site. I lost the studio also due to ill health after supporting the G8 crowd. I returned to the vacant arches next door at Cleland Lane. More of that later. This is a motif of the Venus, a still image captured from experimental filming, natural sunlight over the silver spinning form. Also revealed was an animation of a dancing human form. I have that. This is originally where the motif came from. Seeing where the sun light and dark there. So as an experiment on the effects of the graphic in public environment, my dad gave me his lad for a couple of months. We worked out in the mornings, running up 18 floors in high-rise flats and painted walls in the afternoons. Then, yeah. Then the G8 happened, and we changed the mural in support of that. That was after a meeting with the Starhawk. Show the Starhawk in a bit later. That's the work there. And that made the local news. And this is the science of the Starhawk. We came into Glasgow with a project, and you'll see the project later after this bit of video.
To talk a little bit about the intersection of the sacred, the spiritual, and about permaculture, which is a whole system of ecological design. And one of the things that we talk about in permaculture is the concept of edges, or in biology they call them ecotones, the places where two different systems meet are places of great dynamism, the most creative, most diverse aspects that kind of create a third system that is often richer than either of the other two. So if you are out there looking to find the deer The deer don't hang out in a deep, deep forest, and they don't live out in the middle of the plains. What they really like are those places where the meadow meets the woods, where they can go out to graze and go back into the forest for cover. And if you're looking at something like the ocean, where the ocean meets the shore, there are all these tremendous places of great richness and diversity and vitality, because that connection of those two systems creates so many different niches where different forms of life can live. I often think of that in terms of systems of thought, that when you bring together something like spirituality, ecology, politics, you can create a rich edge that can be sometimes richer than any of those systems can be alone. So that's kind of where I'm coming from today.
And this is in Lauriston, Glasgow. And then this is also, albeit in concrete, the small Venus there. And that was the beginning of some more guerrilla planting of the Little Earth Mother. And the spiral. And this is the next stop I made later on to the Galgale Trust. It's sad that Colin was not with us then. But I made installations.
I know, we come out to call up the protest, we got a wee workshop in Dublin, and we'll steadily get bigger and bigger. Now we have a 11,000 square foot workshop in the Ibrox area, Dublin. Now Ibrox is one of the areas in maybe Britain where it's got the worst statistics for health, crime, addiction, all these kind of things. And it's probably part of a bigger thing, if you've not heard of it before, called the Glasgow effect. Now, the Glasgow effect was a study done by Sir Harry Burns, the former Chief Medical Officer, and also the Glasgow Centre for Population Health, which pointed out that Glasgow has a really terrible mortality rate. Now, Harry Burns has visited us and so on other people involved. They've seen our type of work as one way of maybe alleviating some of that. And I'll tell you why it is. We provide meaningful activity.
And this was a workstation I put in. And that was very well received by some of the participants in the benches, because I created this space just by moving things about that were stacked, maybe not so tidy, so we managed to get that space together. But the comments were that it was a quiet place. That's just what clay does, and that allows people to slow down and have a different conversation than they normally would, maybe at the benches, which is more public. This is an open day. And I did get to bend some metal, and there's Kirty here, some bronze. And then from there, this is the Elder Park Garden Group in Govan, so I was able to assist them in setting up their garden and having a lovely abundance the next year. I'm distributing that with the two people who were in need, with my friend Ailey Graham, in Strathclyde University, community artist, and a guest from Florida, Rod, who was couch surfing between us while he was doing a pinhole photography study. And this is one of the fundraisers that we did with Ailey at my studio. And we raised quite a sum of money to send Ailey to deliver artworks and activities for children around all the places that the children were residing in the orphanages. And we had a fantastic written report and a financial report. But on the verbal report, there was something of concern, and that led to the arrest of individuals who were trafficking children. Very thorough. Gorilla planting, Earth Mother gorilla planting. And this is Governor Hall Ducat as the page, the Facebook pages. It's actually the Millennium Hut. It's an installation by Claire Bradley. It was used by various gardening groups, mostly for storage. I had the time to show how the installation works as an environmental community work station and event space, facilitating for visiting fundraisers, local parents, and to encourage oil painting for health and commerce. So we had to clear it out first and brush it out. Yeah, and then we got the stuff in pots and flowers and gave that to the neighbours. And then painted it up for single use painting. So this is the environmental installation. And they solved the mystery that the locals thought that these poles were for. They had no idea what they were for. But that's just to show you, yes, they are for canopies. They were built for those canopies. And visiting children. And this is around the world in tenner a day. Right, sorry, around the UK in a tenner a day, that family. And then from there we moved on to the Glasshouse art project for Southside Festival. I was asked to curate for that. That's a poster made for it. And this is dressing the walls, transporting artworks, Ailey transporting artworks. And that was the result of the Glasshouse. Best have seen in the comments, apparently, in that space. And this is the Playhouse. It was a vacant derelict land. And this is, I think it's Glasgow College, a theatre group that came in. It's good to see that after my work, but albeit they're burning a tyre. But there you are, it gets to open ground. Let's get outside and do everything outside. This is the film I made, published just before that. Experimental. This is Govan Hill Baths project. I visited him a couple of times. Streetland, and this is me filling in the potholes for the next day. I had intention to take the children in the box bike on rides around the building. Had quite a queue for that. I loved it. And this is the freeze I put out for the parents and children day. This is me later in the evening painting the scenery for a play for refugees. And this is me performing in the Peace Garden next to Govan Hill Baths, to my delight of children out the window applauding. And yeah, it was nice. And this is I think this was for Streetland Day also. So this is a paper mache. Oh, chicken wire. I had no mod rock. I had a bag of chalk. So just made this pretty heavy sculpted piece. And going on the gods for transport. We found an old pram and took it up in that evening and installed it there the next day. I also did some stone carving for the baths, and left them with this stone swimmer's head. And this is a photograph from one of the many photographers who like my bird in the Glasgow Barrowlands. And this is the Great Eastern Auction Rooms that I changed into on the art gallery. Quite happy to do so. Skip through this because it's pretty long. The record is being published. So I realise everyone's time is precious. My collection, other artworks. And the cafe next door to it, also adjoining the gallery in the Glasgow Barrowlands. And then they made a trip to Shawlands, and this is a renovation of premises also. 3 shops that I worked on with that group there. And just going through one wall of one and into the other and a small collection. This is my Glasgow School of Art first year students giving me a hand with that, and that's the finished piece there. This next project is Bridging the Gap in the Gorbals. And so some drawings I did there to engage with that group. This is me giving some Feldenkrais exercise and warm up for the staff and the directors at the beginning of the day. And they also asked me to make an installation for them for Eradication of Poverty Day. So this is everyone joining in here. And this is the music and the sketching, engaging. I sold some of the sketches, and my connections with the Glasgow Jam, who were also working with kids and Contact for Kids. So I raised enough money for the amazing Penny Cheevers and her crew to come in and deliver a session for Contact for Kids for the parents and toddlers in Bridging the Gap. Yeah. A marker. And as I'm speaking about dance, I just so happy to have been part of the closing jam of the new biennial dance event, Dance International Glasgow. And this is Strathclyde University, Architectural Students Masters. It's Dr. Christian Soul and the students and Ellie helping me present them with a painting for their excellent response to environmental practices while they were on site. They were giving me a hand, very conscious, giving me a hand sorting things others left, and some landscaping experiments and painting, bringing the past into the future, and that was their tool shed. And this next project is Govan Hill Community Garden. I had no hand in setting it up, but I was very happy to be around it and help out, especially in the hot evenings with watering the apple trees, fruit trees. But this was just at the beginning of a shutdown, COVID shutdown, so none of these activities really took place. We just took a diary, and I later moved address and onto another project. Yes, this is just stretching. And this film is also archived on YouTube, and it's published date. I'm just showing that very conscious of stretch and the environment. To be one with yourself and the environment. Participants in the model making is about, and these are bicycle helmets used with mod rock to decorate up. Yeah, and this is a coiled pot, a bat pot, more of that later. And other things we do outdoors. And this is indoors, introduction to the 3D world. And performance, closing performance of the garden closing to the public. Chop this up a wee bit. That's it. This will be online. The full experimental film piece record. Yeah, I'm taking movement outside. Some costume now. It's on a wee bit. That gets to. There's more costumes, and this is the walk talk to the Queen, danced all the way from the Govan Hill Garden to the Queen's Park Arena, and then had a performance with a battle with the bats. Oh, ecology. Or a story around the bats. The future and most of my life at this present time. So this is a company who asked me to do some work for them, Industry 5.0. And their project has ambassadors all over the world, and their aim is to reduce waste from source. So as it's an environmental project, I was happy to do some work for them. That's an animation actually, and that is also an animation actually, but we don't have the hardware to run it at the minute. So what more of this piece again? Marker slide. Well, in the beginning when we had the very, very primitive software, but the idea, so these are just diaries, drawings of Venus being taken into space. through the animation aspect. We've done some time ago. Mars comes to Earth, Venus. And this map is an actual map of the Paleolithic finds in national galleries all over Europe. But as a storyline, we just had this, these were the sightings over the news. And this is Tony Robinson, who was a guest of the Glasgow University Rector to come and speak on the processes of film and being chosen for broadcast. But on reflection, looking at all the problems that would arise there, I just thought, well, maybe I should just self-finance and possibly make all that in 3D and have Venus go and visit all these other sites all over the world. I'd use that for storytelling, for culture of Indigenous peoples. And this is also a sketchbook with no great software to speak of. Also freeware, but it's a diary marker of Mud, the pilot, and the spaceship. It's converting another piece of film, experimental film I did elsewhere, and bringing that in. A Venus transit, that's another story. More of this work again. This is Mud, the pilot. He had had enough of the Venus and Mars wars on Earth. So using recycled materials, he built himself a spaceship that was cleverly disguised as a work of art and launched the ship to Mars on Mars Day. After spending some time there in a solar plasma suit, being informed from the chatter on Venus and the rising temperature on Earth, the journey was made to return and help those helping the fragile Earth. Venus in transit is another story. What more for this work? Different materials, different types of clay and different sizes were used. We have experimented with, and then that gave light to this collection. It's called the High Low and Low High. This is in 3 colors of gold and various carats. A limited edition, and this is the artwork for that collection, the High Low and Low High. These are stock frame animations. The software I use is very powerful. It also has grease pencil and can make these 2 animations, 2 characters start to run around in 3D, just on that 2D surface. But I need the hardware to drive those animations for that collection. This is also the High Low and Low High, that skills I got from the MacLab project that was in Charing Cross. I learned rapid prototyping, and this is a CNC cut hazelwood. And this is also a print in resin. I've been following the research on biodegradable and reusable plastics and resins. And that comes to mind being in the skips of a theatre. That I can imagine a theatre being able to provide props, printed props that could just be put in a bin at the end of a show and used just to reprint more props rather than skips going to landfills. There's still quite a bit of research to do on that and for products. This is a render of the collection, and this is also a render of the ethical gold and carbon capture diamond collection, limited edition of bespoke. And here we have hard surface modeling and showing animation and some lighting. And the software I use is very good, but you need the hardware to drive more experiments. So it takes quite some time to create this. So this is why I'm trying to find funds for appropriate hardware to drive more experiments and to teach 3D introductory and bring that on into other projects that can benefit the community by having a voice with such high-end graphics and descriptions of their needs. Enough of those lovely shapes and lights that's forming over there. And here we are again with what more can I learn from this? How more can I be informed from this work? This is back in Cleland Lane after I returned in the Gorbals, and I'm making up a mannequin size. This is for fiberglass casting, and I made that mod rock copies. And this is a motif that was on the walls for 15 years. And then some occurrences happened with this new Thinking is a Crime addition to it, and other artwork, which was on the school run for the parents and toddlers. So I just had to remove that. And at around the same time, the Network Rail were felling the trees above, and so I just moved some back there, and they had a Jackson Pollock Day. Yeah, but an artist moved in from the developers in that arch, and they covered it up with bark. So when they left, that was to have their show. So when they left, I just took the bark off, gave it a wash, and actually used the bark just to landscape there and finish it off again. Nice. But then the developers dumped their rubbish on top of it, and eventually digging up the artwork at the foot to put in electricity for the arches. And this is the developer and lead artist who gave me a key and a lease for 6 months to this Arch 5. I put on, I held it for art for Venus. There's the Venus Transit. And this one is an accolade to the gatekeeper's work also in the Gorbals. I think it's the only suspended Venus, outdoor suspended Venus in the UK. Or suspended sculpture work. But before that show, which included the Yaka Collective from the developers, 2 days before the show, the street work accompanying the show was damaged, and then I repaired that, and that occurred again 2 hours before the show. And that was 54 pieces of artwork in total. And at one, there was a penis drawn on that other one that said thinking was a crime. And that was the beginning of this sort of skyline work, architectural skyline work. But mud, it just has to deal with the new politics on Earth. It's no longer just Venus and Mars, it's Venus and Mars and gender wars. So he has a task to navigate that while trying to save the Earth. And this is a Christmas show. And I came one morning after a snow blizzard, and all the trees had been felled. And you can see they're not very large, some of them. All the trees but one. And on the poodle, that was the aerial view. And that's the poodle. So I left, and then the lane started to become a bit wilder again with these installations of nasty artwork in the environment, accompanied by an artist from the developer who put on this frontage. And the preceding culture that happened around around the lane was not very helpful. There was youth with drugs, knives. There was more people hanging around, obviously intoxicated with drugs, and attacks on traffic by youth. So the culture had really taken a sour note. But the artist here, who had his doors open and two children, and just did not have a character to be working in that environment, the community, they kind of got together and asked him to leave, which he did. Now, the next tenants there is Gorbals Men's Shed, and this is Davy Sheeran accepting the baton as a presentation for his outstanding work in the community, especially in the Cleland Lane, and his response to environmental issues there. I think he's now the president of the Cleland Lane Bat Project, and he's heavily steeped in environmental issues and use of the lane and youth intervention. Some of the workshops, just playing music with the men. This theatre's skip there. Yeah, and these are just fingertips, slow people down, let people have a wee slow down fingertips, and they fired some stuff in there as well. These are all different arches, yes. And the Christmas show for the Gorbals Men's Shed, yes, I did some performance for them for that. And also performance for the Halloween show for them there. The vampires, and some local people who were also engaged with publications on vampires and the Gorbals. They took up the image there. Gave them that. And this is the rest of the architectural work that blacks out the graffiti. It's very minimal, very easy to upkeep. And that goes around the whole building. And this was a problem that was occurring with the contractors for the citizens and the house builders. They're just parking on the cycle lane, come pedestrian pathway, and on the green space, potholes. So we found some materials on site, and we just put in a visual barrier there which worked very well. This was also another visual piece of cobblestones that were being dug up on Gorbel Street, and that was to stop people driving over the green space that the dog walkers use in the evening. So it's to avoid potholes for cars. And that was community planting, community herbal bed. This is this year in Artswurm, and it's sensitive to the environment and the wildlife that's in there. It's just quiet. This is International Women's Day for those who do not have a voice. And this is same space after the April Rebellion. The earth still bled. And the Happy Earth Day, that we just continued that for the full month. This is some of the plants and that we find on the site. This is plantain, it's actually quite medical. And that's the first thing I will use with the people I meet on the green space as a subject for drawing. And the idea is to take that on to 3D, so then we can map the whole area of the green space in 3D of actually what's there. This is the 3D map of Cleland Lane arches and the green space. I've taken from the aerial view. And if I can just pause for a moment. And this is the 3D model. Again, the aerial view and the green space. These annotations are where the bats have been seen. This is the green space, and how to build the architecture here and show how all that works. And from the library, we just place exactly where we find the plants that we have drawn and then made up into 3D and put in the library and map the ground. And then we have the actual artist to build. In 3D. So that would be a good exercise. So I need to be empowered to be able to continue my work. And that is the end of the video. So I look forward to the replies. This is a green space. I cut some pathways through where local runners and walkers give them back the access that they had when grass was shot, and it was not full of nettles. And the dog walkers in the evening, especially the people who have the small dogs, they were not able to access the ground. And this all gives activities for The men shed day, I love to tidying that up also. And for the coming fair. And this is just a continuation of this. Going through, cutting the pathway up through to the chestnut tree. Oops, a daisy, wrong way. Yeah, there we are. And that concludes the show of those images. I look forward to your comments.